Could you please describe the situation in Kyiv these days, as Ukraine seems not just having Russia trying to annihilate, but also USA doing what it's doing?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the war, there are air raid sirens, air raid alerts every day. You hear booms quite often around midnight, sometimes later, from Ukrainian air defense trying to shoot down long-distance drones. People are tired. It's been 3 years of full-scale war. That they are exhausted. Everyone knows someone who's been killed. No longer, someone from Facebook, but a friend, a lover, a brother, a son, a grandchild. And yet life goes on. There are restaurants, there are supermarkets, there are bars. People live, they talk. But I mean, I think what's been very interesting after this tumultuous week that I was just describing is that the vibe I'm getting here on the streets of Kyiv is it feels a bit like 2022 again. But by which I mean, back in 2022, it was clear there was an enormous existential threat to Ukraine. There were Russian tanks coming towards Kyiv. The Putin's plan was to conquer the whole country, to kill Zelensky, put in a kind of pro-Russian puppet administration, and everybody was fighting. Everybody was doing something. Now, over time, that kind of mood went away. Not everyone wanted to fight. It was clear Ukraine was surviving, even though Russians have been advancing really pretty, with some success for a while now. But now with Trump saying, Russia is my friend, Ukraine is my enemy, there's been a consolidation of society. Volodymyr Zelensky's poll rating has gone back up again to about 63%. And there is a feeling that the Ukrainians will fight. They're not going to surrender. They're going to fight.
You wrote an investigation years ago about Trump's visit to Moscow back in 1987. And now we have at least 3 versions of what is happening. One is saying that he just simply gone crazy. Second one is saying that this is a brilliant operation to fool Moscow and then take it by surprise. And the third one, that this is a culmination of decades-long Russian intelligence operation to install an asset into the White House. Which one towards you are leaning to?
I mean, I lean towards 3. I wrote a sort of best-selling book called Collusion in 2017 about Donald Trump and Russia. And I mean, the backstory is clear. I mean, the Czechoslovak spy agencies were following him after he married a woman from Czechoslovakia from the late 1970s. There's a big Donald Trump file going back all the way to about 1979. And what we also know, which I write in my book, is that in about 1986, 1987, at a time when the Soviet KGB was told to find more agents in America, real agents, not just paper agents or journalists, but actual sort of real people who could be useful, upwardly mobile people in politics or business, there was a definite effort by the KGB through the Soviet embassy in New York to cultivate Donald Trump. They invited him to Moscow. He flew with his wife. He met Soviet officials. He discussed doing a hotel project, and it was the beginning of a long-term relationship between the Russians and Donald Trump. And it went through several phases. In the 1990s, I talked to people who said that basically they used Donald Trump for money laundering purposes, that if you'd made a fortune in the late Soviet Union, you could turn up with cash in dollars and you could buy a condominium, you could buy an apartment from Donald Trump. And then there was a kind of renewed push to engage with Trump after he floated this kind of birther conspiracy theory around about 2011, 2012, saying Barack Obama was not American, he was actually African, he was not legitimate, which was kind of very, very useful for the Kremlin as a way to undermine Obama and sow discord within American society. And then, of course, when he became the American presidential candidate in 2015, the Russians were all in for him. And we know from the Mueller report, from the Senate, bipartisan Senate Intelligence Investigation Committee, that there was a kind of large, multi-layered espionage and hacking operation to help Donald Trump win, which to my mind was successful. And so now if we fast forward to where we are today with Trump 2 back in the White House, I mean, we can argue whether he is a Russian asset, in other words, someone who has sort of formally signed up to work for Russian intelligence, or an agent of influence, which is slightly different, or just a useful idiot, to use Lenin's phrase. The reality is that Trump repeats Kremlin propaganda. He has taken enormous steps in the last few days to help Russia diplomatically, to blame Ukraine for the war. And now, of course, there's talk about a summit with Vladimir Putin. So de facto, he behaves like a Russian agent of influence. And I think what we can say for sure is that the Kremlin are delighted about this. And they certainly see it as the culmination of a long-term espionage and recruitment operation, probably, in their view, the most successful operation of the entire Cold War period.
And how do you think Elon Musk fits into this scheme? He's definitely not a KGB or FSB agent.
Well, I mean, I haven't met Musk. I still post on Twitter occasionally. I mean, I've been trolled for a very long time by kind of Russian bots on Twitter. Now I get trolled by American bots. I mean, I think, unfortunately, Musk is someone, to use Zelensky's phrase, who lives in a Russian disinformation bubble. I mean, some of the stuff he posts is just ridiculous. It's ludicrous. Quite a lot of his talking points are ones that begin in Moscow, enter the alternative, far-right American media environment. Trump sees them on his mentions on his Twitter feed, and he then, he then repeats them. And it would be sort of darkly and surreally amusing, funny almost, were it not so serious, because Musk is the person who's been tasked with the job of overhauling the American government, and someone who spends a lot of time with the president. And I think what we can say for sure is that the people who are immediately around Donald Trump are anti-Ukrainian and pro-Russian, pro-Kremlin. And maybe there's an ideological element towards this. Some of them think that Putin stands for family values, for conservatism, for kind of, religious norms, in opposition to woke European liberals, to people like you and me, perhaps. Of course, Putin will stand for anything you want him to stand for.
Dar galingesnės, išmanesnės, efektyvesnės. Daikin Emūra. Čia susitinka tyla ir oro kokybė.